Hey SmugStick, it's everyone. Welcome to the Resurrection F part of What If Goku Was Turned into an Android. Previously, the God of Destruction Beers attacked Earth. He was impressed by the androids Goku and Chi-Chi. He didn't come here for an android god, he came here for the Super Saiyan god, challenging Vegeta instead. The power of the god was incredible, and Goku realized that perhaps he couldn't keep up this Super Saiyan 3 forever. And thanks to his infinite stamina, it only keeps growing. There seems to be something wrong with Goku, as if his antique android body can no longer withstand the amount of power he's putting into it. Still, he pushes himself every day. Unbeknownst to our heroes, the resurrected Frieza is on his way to Earth. Don't forget to subscribe, and let's continue with the scenario. A long time has passed ever since the attack of the God of Destruction on Earth, and our heroes, Vegeta and Goku, are now residing at Beerus' planet, undergoing a grueling training session by the angel, Whis. However, this time Chi-Chi has been making frequent visits and being coached every now and then. After seeing the power of the Super Saiyan God in person, Chi-Chi realized that she didn't want to stay too far behind. She was especially proud of herself for getting a compliment by Beerus. She would bring along Gohan and Goten as well, and Trunks sometimes too to accompany them. Goten was still too little to begin training, though the family would do some small sparring sessions every now and then. Vegeta had spent the majority of his time perfecting Super Saiyan God. He was not only able to power up into it at will now, but he was also able to control his godly ki. Goku, on the other hand, spent his time perfecting Super Saiyan 3, although he felt as if he'd already mastered the transformation. His infinite energy gave it a huge advantage, but he felt as if he was reaching a plateau. Vegeta had shot right above him, and the more Goku pushed himself, the more it seemed things went wrong for him. Chi-Chi didn't have the same issues, and the Saiyan was getting worried that perhaps he was just too old of an android now. After all, he was one of the first two androids based on an actual human. His technology was a little antiquated. Now that they were reaching the heights of the gods, he would need to level himself. During a particularly intense battle between the two Saiyans, one where Vegeta was pushing Goku back, the two of them were interrupted by a message from Chi-Chi and Bulma, who were back on Earth. She informed them of some worrying news. Jacko, a member of the Galactic Patrol, had come to Earth, seeking out Capsule Corp and Bulma to warn them about Frieza's return. Apparently, he was already making his way towards Earth, and he, alongside the entire Frieza force, would be there before the day was done. Goku and Vegeta smirked at each other. This would be an excellent way to test out their new powers. Whis agreed, and alongside Beerus, who was more curious about Frieza's growth, began a journey back to Earth. After all, this Goku doesn't actually have instant transmission. In the meantime, Chi-Chi, Bulma, and Jacko contacted and assembled the Z Fighters, putting together a small but powerful force in preparation for the Emperor's return. They did try to bring Majin Buu along, but sadly, he was in a deep slumber. But Nappa was more than happy to come in his place. All make their way to the location of Frieza's ship. The clouds part as the Emperor's spacecraft lands. From within appears Frieza, along with drones and drones of soldiers. They outnumber our heroes completely. Frieza looked around, clearly expecting to see Goku and Vegeta, but to his disappointment, they weren't amongst the group. He was, however, pleased to see a welcoming committee, though he didn't recognize a lot of them. The ones he did recognize he mocked, such as Nappa, telling him that if he comes to his side right now, perhaps he'll take him to the best hair transplant world he knows. Without saying another word, Frieza points his finger towards a city and releases a devastating blast. Chi-Chi rushed up and slapped the death beam away. It hit the ocean floor, creating a tsunami. Frieza is momentarily stunned, and Chi-Chi takes the opportunity to fire a death beam right back at him. The thin beam cuts through the crowd in front, while Frieza tilts his head ever so slightly to the side, causing the beam to graze his ear before exploding in the distance. He glares at Chi-Chi with murderous intent, then waves his hand and signals for the entire Frieza force to attack. Waves upon waves of men attack the Z Fighters, spreading out and beginning to take them out slowly but surely. Little by little, Chi-Chi works her way closer to Frieza until she's right before the Emperor. Chi-Chi smirks, telling him that she can take him down before her husband even arrives. Frieza admitted to being curious about her. It would be most interesting to see how that monkey would react if the first thing he saw was your lifeless corpse. Perhaps then our battle would be more interesting. Chi-Chi glared and readied herself, getting into a battle stance. Frieza hopped off his pod. Show me the limits of your power, Earthling. The two clashed, creating shockwaves which sent any nearby Frieza soldier flying back. Chi-Chi and Frieza were locked in battle and seemed to be evenly matched. Meanwhile, Gohan and Trunks were fighting alongside Piccolo, moving down enemy lines with ease. However, it was clear that Gohan was distracted by his mother's battle. He didn't want her to face him alone, but he knew out of everyone there, she was their best bet. The battle between Frieza and Chi-Chi only grew more and more intense, not only holding her own, but pushing Frieza back slightly. It wasn't an easy time for the Emperor, but he also wasn't transformed yet. His stamina was slowly being drained, and he didn't want this fight to continue any longer. He flipped backwards onto a rock pillar before starting to power up. The earth itself began to shake, and the ocean swirled around them. A flash shone over Frieza as everyone laid their eyes on his final form.
Well done, Earthling. Seems like you've pushed me into my true state. This feat was previously only achieved by your husband. Fitting, I'll destroy his wife and friends.
Even so, she stood her ground against the evil Emperor, slowly taking damage but protecting everyone around her. Gohan was getting frustrated. He needed to help his mother. Piccolo told him to remain by his side and not to do anything stupid, but before he could finish the sentence, the boy had blasted off. Trunks, wanting to help his friend, flew right after him. Piccolo extended his arms to try to grab them as a group of Frieza soldiers got in the way, overwhelming him as his guard was down. Gohan and Trunks together blasted at Frieza, diverting his attention from Chi-Chi for a split second as she yelled at them to get as far away from here as possible. But it was too late. Frieza began to attack the young Saiyans. As expected, they were no match for the evil overlord, who toyed with them both. Chi-Chi's anger and frustration aided her, however, as electricity burst around her, with a drive to protect her son, and punching Frieza away. Frieza had had enough, raising a finger and concentrating a huge amount of ki into it, creating a devastating supernova, and launching it at the three. Chi-Chi got in front of the kids and prepared herself as Android 16, who had been fighting alongside the others, rushed in front of the trio to create an android barrier. The blast connected with the barrier and the rest was a blur. A blinding light enveloped the area as the dust settled, only to reveal a broken and damaged Android 16, and he fell to the floor. Chi-Chi shouted out for him as she turned to face Frieza. She was confused with rage, rushing over to the tyrant once more. Trunks and Gohan landed over what was left of 16 as Gohan cradled his head in his arms.
Gohan, my nephew, seeing you fight today to protect the planet in your father's place, I could not be prouder, and so is he. I am glad I could protect you three from him. After all, that's what uncles are for.
Electricity crackled and he short-circuited, light fading from his eyes. They were unsure if he could be repaired or not. Trunks watched in horror and was about to reach out his hand towards Gohan when the crying boy erupted into all-consuming rage. His hair flickered between black and gold, and without hesitation, he rushed towards Frieza. Chi-Chi jumped back and out of the way. Gohan managed to strike several successful hits in before Frieza inevitably stopped the attack. He had to admit, he was surprised by the teenager's sudden increase in power, but it was all a fraction of the Emperor's strength. Frieza landed a punch across Gohan's face, with Chi-Chi, Trunks, and even Piccolo rushing in to help. But slowly, all four of them were defeated. Trunks carried Android 16's body over to Bulma, who said that indeed he could be repaired, but there was nothing she could do now. It all looked hopeless. Frieza lowered himself down and aimed to blast the group. Chi-Chi and the others stood side by side, unwilling to give up against such evil. A death beam was shot, but it was deflected as Goku and Vegeta emerged from a white beam of light, Beerus and Whis in tow, of course. Frieza looked horrified to see the god of destruction, thinking that it was all over, but that turned into a smirk as the angel and the god retreated to watch over the sidelines. Goku was enraged at seeing what happened to his wife, his son, and his brother. Vegeta knew of Kakarot's rage, but he was also robbed of his chance at killing Frieza in the past. It was him, not Kakarot, who was the subject to his slavery and rule over all his life, so it should be he who puts down the monster. Even so, Goku was shaking with anger and completely ignored Vegeta, rushing in and beginning a counterattack against the Emperor, who couldn't do anything to defend himself at first, not in his current state anyway. After a particularly devastating combo, Frieza was left falling towards the ground. He flipped backwards, landing on his feet, with an evil glare on his face as he looked up to his attacker. With a smirk, he did his signature pose and began to rise his power to the max. A golden and purple light shone over him as he transformed, this time into an entirely golden state.
I call this Golden Frieza, monkeys. I think it's an improvement on that Saiyan transformation you rely so highly on.
Giving Goku no time to react, he fired a barrage of death beams. Goku absorbed one, but the rest began to hit him. Frieza rushed at the android, striking him several times in a combo, leaving Goku on the ground for a second. Vegeta took a step forward, wondering if he needed to step in at last, but was met with an annoyed, "Wait your turn, Vegeta. Can't you see I'm not done here yet?" And with that, Goku pulled himself out of the dirt and powered back up. Frieza grinned, knowing that this android had his limits, and began to charge up a massive supernova. Goku watched the ball grow and grow. It would easily destroy Earth if it hit the ground. Goku needed to stop the attack. Frieza launched the death ball, and Goku stood his ground, putting his arms forward and activating his ki absorption. He would use Frieza's own power against him. That's what he gets for his arrogance. The blast connected with his hands, and Goku shouted out in pain as the intensity of the attack began to push him backwards. He was determined, and it showed. Goku kept absorbing the blast despite all the pain. He wouldn't allow Earth to be destroyed. Frieza had already done so much. This is his punishment for taking too long to get here. If he had been faster, then maybe his brother would still be here. He was cut off from his train of thought as the blast finished absorbing. The power radiated through his body before unleashing a blast right back at the Emperor. The wave was massive, and it blinded everyone. Frieza was completely consumed by it, but as the light faded, his tail scorched and heavily damaged, but he remained nonetheless. The Z-Fighters gasped in horror as Frieza laughed, but he realized they weren't gasping at him. As he turned to look at Goku, his arms completely destroyed. The sheer intensity of not only absorbing Frieza's power, but using his own to blast it back was too much for his arms to handle. His cybernetics had failed him finally, and exploded upon releasing the blast. As electricity sprouted from his arms, he fell to his knees. He wanted to keep fighting. He tried to keep fighting. He rushed up, trying to throw a punch, but nothing could land. Frieza just spun on his heel and slapped him down with his tail. Goku was in no position to fight now. Chi-Chi rushed over to her husband, catching him as he started to fall. He was still conscious but extremely hurt. Chi-Chi's energy spiked in anger as she cursed, a powerful and ominous ki washing over her. Just for a moment, her eyes turned a crimson-red color, and purple electricity formed around her. She laid Goku down, but then felt a hand on her shoulder, belonging to none other than Vegeta. "I'm sorry about him, Chi-Chi. Take him to Bulma before it's too late. I'll finish what he started." Immediately, that ominous aura vanished, and she came to her senses. She couldn't defeat Frieza now, she knew that. It was better to leave it up to Vegeta. Nodding and rushing Goku over to Bulma as he lost consciousness, laying him next to Android 16. The prince powered up into his Super Saiyan Blue state and lifted his hand up, signaling to Frieza to come at him. This was his strongest form yet, and Frieza could tell it was going to be a difficult battle.
You see, Frieza, I am a true Saiyan. I have no need for cybernetics like Kakarot. I am what you feared the most, a fully realized legendary Super Saiyan, endorsed by the gods themselves.
By the time I'm finished with you, Vegeta, you'll be needing those cybernetics.
The prince scoffed, blasting off towards Frieza and beginning a ruthless assault, finishing it off with a fiery ki blast. The Emperor was taken aback by the prince's speed and power. He didn't expect it at all, before rapidly firing multiple death beams. Vegeta smirked as he threw a small white ki ball towards Frieza. As it passed by the Emperor's head, Frieza laughed, thinking that he'd missed, before Vegeta screamed out,
"Burst open and mix!"
Right behind Frieza, the small and discreet ki ball exploded open, creating a blinding white light as well as a devastating explosion that hit Frieza dead on. Frieza tried to get his bearings, but Vegeta took the chance to continue the assault. Slowly and trying to defend himself, Frieza ran through his ki reserves. He glared at Vegeta before firing a blast. It wasn't as strong as the one he used against Goku, but he poured more power into them, trying to not only kill Vegeta but destroy the entire solar system if any of them hit. He didn't care at this point, he just wanted them all dead. He could at least survive in the vacuum of space, or be revived again. Vegeta countered with his own final flash. The blast connected, creating rippling shockwaves that shook planets across space. That's when Sorbet saw an opening, pointing his ki ring at Vegeta and firing a blast. Unfortunately for him, Trunks intervened, knocking the blast to the side. Vegeta was distracted for a second, glancing over at his son. Sorbet carried on with his attack, blasting at Trunks over and over again. Trunks attempted to copy a barrier, inspired by the one Goku used, but it just wasn't able to withstand the intensity of the blast, eventually destroying the barrier. nightmare as Gohan appeared behind Sorbet and knocked him down with a single attack. But his father felt a great deal of pride, and that pride would manifest into an even stronger power. His teal blue hair deepened in color as a rush of powerful ki washed over him. His final flash burst with newfound strength and engulfed Frieza's own beam as the Emperor was consumed. Vegeta didn't even check if Frieza remained as he ran over to his son. Trunks was okay as he wiped some blood off his face. Vegeta was proud of his son's guts. With Frieza defeated, Goku regained consciousness and he looked around. He punched at the ground, only to realize that his arm was nothing more than a phantom pain. Still, Vegeta helped Goku up. He had to admit that Super Saiyan Blue was incredible. Super Saiyan 3 had served him well, and could still be useful, but if he wanted to keep up with Vegeta, then surely he would need to get stronger a different way. That's when Bulma interrupted. Between the fight against Beerus and the fight against Vegeta, it seems Goku's body might slowly be reaching its limit. After all, Goku was one of Gero's first androids, and he had a lot of growing up to do in that time. All those cybernetics were made for a body of a child, with outdated technology. You see, although Goku is extremely powerful and has the ability to get stronger, just like 17 and 18, he was made with much more antiquated technology, and not made to endure this kind of abuse. But Bulma offered to help. She could unlock the potential of the cybernetics. Maybe she even had a few ideas of how to help him get stronger, if he was set on not going for the gods. Vegeta was upset at Bulma for helping Kakarot so much, to which Bulma just pointed at the fact that the man had just lost his arms and his brother. She said that her father could also rebuild Android 16, with similarly stronger material. Goku sighed while looking at the sky. He hated having to rely so much on what Gero made him to be. But if this was his destiny, he'd have to accept it. Bulma clapped happily, saying that she'll need Gohan and Trunks' help, but especially Vegeta's. Why? You want to study my artificial moon? Bulma smirked as Goku raised an eyebrow. Things were starting to get interesting. But in an underground lab, things were beginning to be put into motion. The computer displayed a set of pink data. It had collected the DNA of Majin Buu. A new android had been completed. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I really like doing this part. A huge thank you to my girlfriend NowariaDB on Twitter. She helped me write a majority of this story. And a huge thank you to the patrons of the channel, who get to watch videos like this early. And if you want to learn a little bit about the strange history of Dragon Ball, why not check out my latest video, The Strange World of Dragon Ball on Stage.